in my involvement in IBJJF and just all of the Brazilians I know, you can just take Bomba, which is what they call it. You can just take Bomba and like pretty much guarantee that you're going to get away with it until now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, some groundbreaking news in the jiu-jitsu world. And just briefly, I just want to say that I've been involved in jiu-jitsu for a little over 2 years now. I used to train all the time. I've since slowed down a little bit, but I've competed as a white belt in IBJJF. And then I competed in a super fight as a blue belt. So I have a little bit of a history with this sport. So this news came firing at me on social media, and I felt the need to talk about it. As reported by USADA, 5 Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu athletes accept sanctions for anti-doping rule violations. And this is an important distinction here. Although the IBJJF is not a signatory to the World Anti-Doping Code, USADA was contracted by IBJJF to conduct testing and results management program for the event, which also includes a post-event out-of-competition testing. And IBJJF has agreed to impose the below sanctions. So just so we're clear, IBJJF means International Brazilian Jiu Jitsu Federation. They compete both in the gi, which is those weird pajamas, and out of the gi. However, jiu-jitsu as a sport or grappling as a sport is performed outside of the IBJJF and with quite a bit of proliferation. If you didn't see this past year, the ADCC happened. The ADCC is like the Olympics of grappling. It's very apparent that there is no drug testing. And that's a very open thing. It is legal to take performance-enhancing drugs. So all of, if not all of, the highest competitors in the ADCC are taking performance-enhancing drugs. There are also a lot of promotions as well, like Who's Number One, One Championship. Even UFC has their own grappling promotion, all of which I'm pretty sure are untested. So the IBJJF, they contract USADA every once in a while, but for the most part, the athletes that compete in the IBJJF are kind of like, we're willing to take that risk, which is really strange. Like almost every other Olympic sport you look at, people are scared shitless of WADA and USADA, and for good reason. So before we get into the actual sanctions that we're looking at here, I want to show you guys the sanction list for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu on USADA. So this is a part of the website that I go to a lot. It's the database of all of the sanctions in USADA's history. And the earliest sanction was in 2014. Gabrielle Lemos Garcia. So she had clomiphene, and it was a loss of results of that competition. So it's not a very scary sanction. Breno Faria, non-analytical finding, 4-year loss of results. That's 4-year suspension and loss of results. That's pretty hefty. Then we have Braulio Estima. Braulio Estima is an incredibly famous gi fighter. He has his own submission. It's called the Estima lock. Methylhexanamine, 2-year suspension, loss of results. And this is where things start to get serious. 2015, we have Felipe Pena. Now, this is an interesting one because he had a 2-year suspension with a 1-year reduction. So he had a 1-year suspension for just having anabolic steroids in his system. For those of you that don't know, Felipe Pena has this ongoing rivalry with Gordon. Gordon is also fond of the performance-enhancing drugs, which, is part of the sport at this point. Then we have Leonardo Nogueira, 2-year suspension. Paulo Miao, a very famous gi fighter as well. Clomiphene, 2-year suspension. Additional 3 months of suspension. Taian Porfirio de Araujo. I'm sorry, guys. My Portuguese pronunciation or Brazilian, whatever, is not very good. Kainan Duarte, 1-year suspension for Austrian. Now, he's a big player. And then we have Felipe Pena again. With clomiphene, just a 1-year suspension again. So they're definitely playing favorites, right? Because Felipe Pena is the golden child of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Okay, now we have our current suspension of 5 athletes. This is where USADA was like, oh, you want to contract us? Okay, we're gonna come at you guys really hard. So we have Igor Nascimento de Costa Feliz, exogenous testosterone and metabolites, probably like cypionate or something. He was only 24 years old, already dabbling in testosterone. We have Yonatas Gracie, now has Araujo da Silva. I don't know if that's part of it, but the Gracie family name is a very famous name in jiu-jitsu. He had 19 norandrosterone. 19NA. I don't know what that is. A metabolite of nandrolone. There we go. So nandrolone is, I think that's DECA. There's like the bodybuilder or the strength world slang for these, and it's hard to connect the dots sometimes. 3-year suspension for Yonatas Gracie. Now we have Cyborg, Roberto de Abreu Filho, 42 years old, tested positive for exogenous test. Okay, we're going to get back to that one because that's an important one. Now we have Jose Cardoso, tested positive for, wow, that's a long chain there. And epitrenbolone. Mans is taking TREN. And then methasterone. Man, this guy's taking the kitchen sink. Okay. 3-year period of ineligibility starting February 1st, 2023. Now, Vagner Hocha, another very famous gi fighter and no gi fighter, he just refused to submit a sample. And so he has a 3-year sanction. Now, we're going to look at what Cyborg had to say. Now, Cyborg's a big name in the jiu-jitsu world. Again, he's 42 years old. So obviously he's been doing HRT to stay relevant. Now, this is a translation, I believe, from Portuguese. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt if there's some things that just kind of seem off. Please, no hypocrisy. The world needs to get over the fact that if athletes like us are going to train as hard as we do, as often as we do, as intensely as we do, for as many years as we have, then we all have to take the steps necessary to make sure we can recover and keep training. I'm 42 years old, completing 43 this year, and I believe nobody has ever done what I'm doing in this moment. Winning worlds at an adult division at 40, 41, and 42, 3 years consecutive, being the best heavyweight no-gi in the history of IBJJF, winning 7 titles on ultra heavyweight division, and 1 as an absolute. So absolute is when you compete across all weight categories, which is something that they do in jiu-jitsu. And then he says, I'm not bragging, but this is incredible. It's a great mark for us older guys. HRT is super beneficial for athletes over 30. Everything I take is prescribed by a doctor and is professionally followed by his team accords to my needs. And I highly suggest it. Well, I don't know that you can or should highly suggest something that is seen as medical. If we're looking at HRT and TRT, in one paragraph, he talks about performance and performing at a high level as an athlete. But in the other, he says that it's medical, right? Medical need for TRT or HRT, whatever, is to get you to baseline, not to get you to super physiological levels so that you can train harder and work harder, which he undoubtedly was doing. We are making no money from IBJJF, and we are having to compete against much younger athletes who are allowed to be on everything for professional events. So basically, we are competing for fun at IBJJF, not getting paid like UFC, for instance, while none of the professional events are testing. Well, this is true. None of the professional events are testing, but the only reason these guys are in the IBJJF is because they know everyone. This is the Brazilian Jiu Jitsu Federation. It's not like the World Federation. So Brazilians have like this very tight net in which they know everyone. And yeah, if USADA comes and messes with things, like there's not much that the Brazilian Federation can do. However, there's probably likely ways that they've been around this before, right? We have had USADA testing Brazilian Jiu Jitsu athletes in the IBJJF since 2014. So if you've been taking steroids and competing in the IBJJF, you've been breaking the rules since 2014. But why would you do that? Simply because you're likely not going to get caught, right? And it's been this thing. Like I felt it. So many people I know have felt it. Like you just know that certain guys are on steroids, but they weren't even getting tested, right? It's different. They're not trying to have to pass tests or even cycle off. They just know they're not going to get tested. So this is why this is interesting. It just comes in one day, boom, might be enough to scare people to not do it again. Also, only the champs are tested. What about the second place guys getting the title? Did they test? No. Is that fair? No. In my eyes, the IBJJF wants to take it seriously, wants to make it professional, as they say. Okay, test everyone, adults and masters division, make it fair to everyone, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So yeah, I mean, that's true. It's true to go ahead and test every single person that is in the high level black belt. I think that's not a scary thing. Or just have randomized testing. Be like, hey guys, every single open IBJJF open that we have, and championships and world championships and Pan Ams, like every single one, random people are going to get tested. So in a category, whatever the weight division is, whether it's ultra heavy, super heavy, heavyweight, and so on and so forth, we are going to test randomly. Okay, that's a little bit more scary or more doable than saying every black belt that signs up, we're going to test. And the reason I only say black belts is because, like, guys, I mean, brown belts, I feel like they're just kind of like in a holding pattern, like waiting to get their black belt and maybe compete seriously. I mean, unless you're young and Brazilian, everyone else that is, you know, like myself in blue belt, like they're probably just like, yeah, take drugs. It doesn't matter. We'll wait till you get to black belt when shit actually matters, and then we'll test you. That would be the best way to do it, I think, or the most reasonable way to do it. But I could be wrong. Look, anyway, in closing, like it's important to know the distinction and how this kind of operates in jiu-jitsu. There is no testing for these big matches that you see, like Gordon Ryan versus Felipe Pena on who's number one, or all of the ADCC stuff. There is no drug testing in that. But the IBJJF has had testing since 2014. However, in my involvement in IBJJF and just all of the Brazilians I know, you can just take Bomba, which is what they call it. You can just take Bomba and like pretty much guarantee that you're going to get away with it until now. And that's why this is interesting. I would love to see how things operate going forward. If people are actually going to be scared, I think like there's still going to be people who are like, nah, I've gotten away with it for so many years without getting tested. Like, I'm pretty sure I can get away with it again. Or are they just going to keep deploying this testing on the top? I don't know. Comment to what you guys think should be done or will be done in the future, and I will see you guys in the next video.